decision makers in the search.
So you were told about that?
I'm sure we're aware of that.
But what do you mean? Were you told?
I can't recall a particular day when the Malaysians called and said that, but I think everyone had come to that conclusion.
3 weeks into the hunt for the missing aircraft, former Chief of Defence Sir Angus Houston was brought in to coordinate the search.
We haven't found anything anywhere that has any connection.
In his role, he participated in meetings at the very highest levels.
What did the Malaysian PM tell you about what he thought happened?
He didn't indicate what he thought had happened. And neither did Prime Minister Abbott.
So the Prime Minister at the time never told you
No.
what the Malaysian leader told him?
No.
So murder-suicide never came up?
No.
No, I don't recall ever being told that explicitly by anyone in authority in Malaysia that was the case. I was kept in touch with the Malaysian police investigation, both directly and through the Australian Federal Police, but no one ever passed on to me that level of certainty from the Malaysians.
Martin Dolan's role in the hunt for MH370 was critical. As head of the Australian Transport Safety Bureau at the time, he spent the final 2 years of his career on the search.
I look back on it primarily with regret that we weren't able to deliver, particularly for the families, the answers that they were so desperately looking for.
Is that something that still nags at you?
Of course. It's not the sort of thing you can easily give away when you devote that much of your time and focus to one thing, not to succeed in the task of finding the missing aircraft. Yes. And you review everything, you think, did we get something wrong? Should we have done it differently? All of those things, yes.
Both the Minister for Transport and the ATSB based their parameters for the search on what's described as a ghost flight or a death dive, meaning the pilot was also dead when the plane ran out of fuel at 40,000 feet.
You once said it was highly, highly likely the plane was on autopilot at the end. Do you still think that?
Well, I think that it's likely that there was no one alive on the aircraft in the last few hours. Clearly, there was somebody directed the course that the aircraft took to make the turns to the west and then to the south. That was obviously under some kind of human intervention at that time. But I suspect that it was on autopilot from then on, and whether there was anybody alive is a matter for conjecture.
So you haven't changed your mind when it comes to that?
I'm of the view that there was no one alive on the plane for the last few hours.
OK, left engine is quitting.
If that was true, if no one was in control when MH370 ran out of fuel, it would have spiralled into what's known as a death dive.
Left engine shut down.
In a 777 simulator, pilot Byron Bailey shows me what, if that were the case, would have happened.
570 knots. That's about 1,000 kilometres an hour. This is going to hurt.
The plane's design meant it would corkscrew, increasing speed until it plunged into the ocean.
So you can see the sea coming up. Oh, I hate the visuals.
That's it. So that's a big crash.
Horrendous.
That's a big
You would
crash.
have exploded into millions of bits.
The final end-of-flight scenario is crucial to establishing the possible location of the MH370 wreckage. Byron Bailey has always maintained the search zone was wrong. He says it couldn't have been a death dive. He believes the pilot glided the plane as far as possible and landed it on the water outside the search zone just after sunrise so he could see the swell.
All the evidence points to the fact it was ditched. And I'm sure the captain, brilliant captain as he was, brilliant pilot, was trying to ditch the aircraft in as far south, remote location as possible and leave as little wreckage as possible that would sink.
Byron Bailey started out as a young navigator turned fighter pilot with the New Zealand Air Force and went on to fly Boeing 777s for the Emirates airline for 15 years. He's been an outspoken critic of the search and our government's handling of the disaster, saying about $200 million taxpayer dollars was wasted on searches that found nothing.
This time they came clean. Admitted that the ATSB was a rogue outfit that had no oversight, that made a stupid suggestion initially to avoid embarrassing the Malaysians. And the Malaysians just sat back through this whole thing. They never agreed with the ATSB that it was a catastrophic event that rendered the pilots unconscious or dead or whatever. The Malaysians said right at the start, it's human intervention. And right at the end, they said it's human intervention. They knew.
What are they going to tell me when I talk about Byron Bailey? Are they going to say, the old man is bonkers?
Oh, sure, I've been flying aeroplanes for over 50 years. I've got 1,000 hours command Boeing 777s, 26,000 hours total. No, I actually fall in the category of being an aviation expert. My colleagues like Mike Keane, who was chief pilot of UK's largest airline, is along with me. He's an expert.
My concern in this case, for those who say that the aircraft crashed in a so-called ghosted flight, they made up their minds near the start that this occurred. So they're looking for supporting evidence all the way along the line to collaborate that part. Sometimes it's convenient to turn your back on something as far as governments are concerned.
What are you referring to there?
Countries are very protective about their own organisations, airlines, reputations, etc.
Like Byron Bailey, Mike Keane began his aviation career as a navigator with the New Zealand Air Force. He too became a fighter pilot and survived a catastrophic crash, ejecting with just seconds to spare.
So that was your plane?
Yeah,
Thousands of pieces?
yeah. The whole aircraft was, from the cockpit backwards, was just a big ball of fire.
You're lucky to be alive, Mike.
Yeah, very lucky.
He went on to fly commercial airliners around the world.
The government says it looked at all possible theories.
Well, they haven't.
Because they didn't look at yours.
Yeah.
They didn't look at Byron's.
We've worked independently on this. It's not as if we've all got together in a room and said, well, this is it. And in fact, the positions that we were quoting are slightly different. We came from different directions and reached the same conclusions.
Despite their parallel careers, Mike Keane and Byron Bailey had never met before the disappearance of MH370. It's their shared interest in how the flight ended that has brought them together.
I've got other people behind me that are seriously qualified people, but they won't listen to any of us, just ignore us.
Both Byron and Mike say they know exactly where to search for the wreckage of MH370.
They should be searching a little bit further south. What they've done is they've made up a point there of doing a search on the assumption the aircraft's just gone into virtually a vertical dive. Why didn't they take into account and do a search on information which came from people like ourselves on going a little bit further south on the assumption that the aircraft did not go into a vertical dive, but did a landing on that, on the water?
Where is the wreckage, in your view?
I think it's probably the best part of about 150 k's further south than where they're searching at the moment.
We're in cruise at 39,000 feet.
Back in the flight simulator, Byron shows me what he thinks happened.
Hello, engines running down. Looks like we have flamed out.
At 40,000 feet and out of fuel, he glides the plane as far as he can.
He would have ditched into wind to keep the speed down as much as possible to avoid a lot of wreckage. So that's what we'll try and do, all right?
When Byron recreated the death dive, the plane crashed within a few minutes of passing the 7th arc.
One more. Now what that is warning is I haven't got the gear down.
This time, we fly for almost half an hour,
That's 500 feet before we ditch.
reaching at least 130 kilometres in distance and, in Byron's view, past the search zone.
Okay, I'll start to flare now. And then we hit the water. We are dead.
So do you know where it is?
Yeah.
Where is it?
Latitude 3910 southeast 8818.
If Byron's right, this is it, just outside the search zone.
That's very specific.
Yep.
What if you're wrong?
Well, let's just say the ATSB, as part of their searching 40 miles either side of the arc, came within about 30 kilometres of where we reckon the aeroplane ditched. If I'm wrong, then it means the aeroplane's probably been taken by aliens or is sitting in a hangar somewhere in Kazakhstan.
That's how sure you are.
Absolutely, I'm
You're
so
willing
sure.
to bet anything on it.
I'll bet my
That plane
house
is
on
in
it.
that specific spot.
Yeah, I'll bet my house on it. As far as I'm concerned, it's game over. We know where it is. We've always known where it is.
The ATSB did consider the possibility of the controlled ditching and found, by using a 777 simulator, it was possible. But like Blaine Gibson, the ATSB concluded the small pieces of debris indicated a high-speed impact with water that was not consistent with a controlled ditching. However, over time, Martin Dolan changed his mind.
Do you still believe that it was a final out-of-control dive?
I think the evidence is less clear now, given that we have managed to eliminate most of the area associated with that scenario.
So if you had your time again, where would you search?
There's nothing fundamentally different that we would do. We just now have some additional information which has been brought to bear and still leads to the conclusion that the most likely location is in or around the area that we have been searching. That means there's an increasing likelihood that there was someone at the controls at the end of flight.
Does Australia face any blame?
Well, we were looking in the wrong place. We were obviously guided in the choice of that place by experts around the world. There was a multi-nation agreement that this was the place that we should look.
So someone like Byron Bailey might be right.
Yes. He might be right. I don't disagree with any of the basic assumptions that Byron has.
You already searched 120,000 square kilometres of ocean. Why not search another 7,000 more?
Well, and then another 10,000 after that. We had already increased the search area on a number of occasions, and it was a multinational agreement that any further search was less likely to find the aircraft. Now, with the benefit of those areas being eliminated, anyone can come up with a third best option. But how far do you go?
If it is a fact that the furthest reaches were not explored because of assumptions of a pilot who was no longer at the controls, I would say let's ditch that assumption. Let's assume that it was murder-suicide by the pilot. And if there is any part of that ocean that could have been reached on that basis that has not yet been explored, let's get out and explore it.
Coming up,
Spend the money and find that plane. It's incredibly important. Everyone who flies, the minute we get in the air, we're a bit worried.
How can you leave our families out there?
How do we find it?
I have an idea.
I'm a different person. Now I can see a future.
Loves the tonic, huh?
Yes, it is. I'm like the luckiest and the unluckiest and the luckiest woman again to find love.
France is now the only country still conducting an active investigation into the crash. Boeing, who built the 777, has handed over streams of data that the French are now working through for their own victims. So far, it's revealed abnormal turns were made at the end of the flight that could only have been done manually, suggesting the pilot was in control at the end. And if that's true, it fits the theory that the aim was to minimise impact.
I thought it was the greatest mystery of all time. It just seemed absolutely impossible that an aircraft of that size could just disappear.
Record-breaking aviator Dick Smith has been flying since 1973. Like everyone else, he finds the disappearance of MH370 utterly mystifying. What do you think it is specifically that gets people engaged so much with this particular missing plane and this accident?
I think the reason it's so important and people are so worried about it is it's the great mystery. Now, when the Airbus aircraft of Air France came down in the Atlantic, a huge amount of money was spent to find the flight data recorder, and then they found out that one of the pilots had held the stick back, and the plane would have come out of stall if they'd just let go. So that would save lots of lives, because all training pilots from then on are told, don't hold the stick back. Pretty obvious.
We can't believe it! We've done it! How hard was it? Bloody hard!
His bold adventures are the stuff of legend.
I suppose it hasn't been done before.
While Dick spent his career both making and taking calculated risks,
I'm very excited because I've just pulled out this last map.
for him, safety is paramount. He's also the former chairman of the Civil Aviation Authority.
It's incredibly important that this aircraft is found, because if it was a murder-suicide, we're not going to learn much. But there's a chance that it wasn't just a murder-suicide. There's a chance that something went wrong with the aircraft. And we need to find that aircraft, to find that out so people who fly now are safe. It's really important we spend the money.
Dick is a firm believer that the hunt for MH370 must continue.
That's why we should spend the money and find that plane. It's incredibly important. Everyone who flies, the minute we get in the air, we're a bit worried. Even I'm a pilot and I'm worried, is this flight going to be successful? It's a strange place. You're in this little metal tube that's pressurised on the edge of space. So you want to know every single accident there is. You want people to be able to inspect the hull, find out what went wrong, and make sure it doesn't happen again.
How do we find it?
It's going to be very hard. We have to spend money, and I have an idea. There are 4 billion passengers that fly every year, and you'd only have to put 10 cents on an air ticket to get $400 million a year to do the search. And that's what we should be doing. If there's ever an example of a government putting profits in front of safety, is the way they've stopped searching for that airline. We should keep searching for it.
Do you reckon anyone would have a problem with paying 10 cents for a ticket?
Who's the self-interest in this? The self-interest in every one of us that flies in the air. And there's 4 billion of us a year. That's not much on each ticket. 10 cents would give $400 million to actually get the search going again. And I believe with that amount of money, you'd find the aircraft.
Excuse me, do a quick sit clap.
Finding MH370 is an outcome Danica Weeks and the other families who lost loved ones that day would dearly love to see.
Okay, well, let's, Danica, I'll start with you. Just a big smile on your face now. Yeah.
Despite all the heartache that Danica suffered after losing her much-loved husband, Paul, her life has turned a very unexpected corner.
I'm a different person, very, very different person. Sometimes I picture myself and think, gee, who was that girl beforehand? But no, life's good. And I see now I can see a future. And that's been something I haven't had for 6 years.
Loves the tonic, huh?
Yes, it is, absolutely.
And that tonic is John.
I say I'm like the luckiest and the unluckiest and the luckiest woman again to find love. You know, some people don't find it the first time round, and I've been lucky to find it a second.
Were you ready, Danica, to open yourself up again?
Yes, for the right person. Because as soon as, you know, he told me he was going to support me and whatever endeavours I took on, and he appreciated my fight to bring Paulie home, and yep. That was it.
John, you're not just with Danica, you're with the ghost of Paul. How do you deal with that?
I think that from what I know, what Dan's told me of him, that he's similar to my style of man. You know, I'm a man's man. I know what's right. I know what's wrong. I know how to raise a kid. I can start a fire. I can fish. I can supply. I can provide. I can do just about anything that needs to be done as a man. And I think that Paul was very similar to me. So I think that's why I sort of stack up to that type of person.
But Danica has not just herself, but her 2 young sons to consider. Lincoln and Jack are now aged 9 and 6. Introducing John was a decision that wasn't taken lightly.
And I tried to sort of pull out of it and think it's too early. And then I saw John with the boys on the beach, and I went, this is right. I need to be, vulnerable. I had my wall up because, I've changed and I've had to fight a real battle.
It is difficult to know that there's always going to be that factor that for the boys, not just Dan, but for the boys as well, that their father's always been, they've never known him as much as they needed to. And that's going to be my job to take the baton and bring these boys up in a very difficult world with 100% support, and they just need everything that they're going to get from me to walk out into that big world and go, all right, I'm going to be a man. And that's my job.
It's a job that John's embracing wholeheartedly.
That was a deliberate plan to not go so fast.
I had to be right with it. And,
I think we both did.
Yeah, true. And it was the right time.
Yeah, I think it was definitely being able to find each other's parameters and let the boys get to know me, let Dan all of us get to know each other. I think that's the most important part before we just barrel out and get married.
Yeah.
And that's just what they've done this year.
And what do the kids think?
Oh, they're ecstatic. They are. They're really happy. And I think you asked me once whether Paul would agree with his parenting style. And I said, actually, yes. They're very similar. Paul's from the army. He has this, obviously strong personality, and John has that strong personality. I have no qualms in that John will raise our boys exactly the way that Paul would have wanted. I think Paul would be, wherever he is, would be looking down and going, yes, Dan, yeah, you got it right.
And for the families of the 239 people who perished on board, all they have left is hope.
I just wish we'd got a lucky break along the way so that we could have found it, because the families continue to suffer.
It's about those poor souls who were lost and the grieving relatives who've been left behind. And that's always what this has got to be about. Those who are lost, those who are left behind, and for their sakes, continuing the search.
The search for any answers at all. But for now, the official government position is that another search won't be launched until new, credible information is uncovered.
If you had someone at the controls deliberately trying to take the aircraft as far away as possible and to leave its final location uncertain, the area to cover that possibility is just so enormous that the search would be, it's theoretically possible, but the price of it would be beyond anything that I think anyone would be willing to pay.
I think that someday it will be found, the underwater wreckage, and someday we will know the truth, and I hope it's in my lifetime.
I talk to Kath and Bob pretty well every day. And it's still like they're with me here, no matter what. But I can't say goodbye. I know, it sounds odd, I know, because they're not coming home. I know that. But I can't say goodbye. To give up a search, how can you leave our families out there?
I need him home, and I won't leave him out there. He wasn't just my husband, he was my best friend. No, he's my family. No one takes from my family with no answers. That's it, end of. And I'll keep fighting until I know.
370, 3 to right of takeoff. 9. 3 to right of takeoff, Malaysia 37, Lampo, radar, good morning, climb flight level 250. morning, level 250, Malaysian.